I'll never forget that night. The sound of the heart monitor echoing through the sterile room, the slow mechanical beeping that reminded me my daughter was still alive, but just barely. Every beat was a battle, every breath a borrowed moment. The doctor had just looked me in the eyes, those tired, heavy eyes that carried too many stories like mine, and said, "We're doing everything we can, but her chances are low." I nodded because what else can a father do when the world starts collapsing? I stood by her bedside, my hand wrapped around hers. It was cold, so cold. Her fingers used to be warm. They used to squeeze mine when she was little, when she was scared of thunderstorms. Now they were limp, and all I could do was whisper, "Hang on, baby. You fight, okay? Daddy's right here." I remember thinking how unfair it was, how life can turn from laughter to silence in one heartbeat. I looked at the clock. Midnight. He should have been here by now. Her husband. The man who swore to love her in sickness and in health. He wasn't answering his phone. He wasn't in the hallway. He wasn't anywhere near that hospital. For hours, I kept telling myself he was probably on his way. Maybe he got stuck in traffic. Maybe his phone died. I gave him every excuse a decent man could come up with. But deep down, something inside me already knew. A father knows when something isn't right. So I pulled out my phone. I don't even know why. Maybe out of habit, maybe out of desperation. I opened her social media and then I saw a video posted just an hour ago. He was smiling. Not the polite smile you wear to hide pain, but a real one. A big, carefree, glowing smile. Behind him, the ocean stretched endlessly under a golden sunset. There were people laughing, music playing, champagne glasses clinking, and next to him, a woman. She wasn't my daughter. They were on a yacht, dancing, celebrating, while my daughter was fighting for her life under a surgeon's knife. I remember my hands shaking, my throat went dry for a second, I couldn't even breathe. I turned off the screen and just stood there. The beeping from the monitor seemed louder now. Each beep stabbed into my chest like a knife. That was the moment I realized anger wouldn't save her. If I lost control, if I broke down, I'd lose her for sure. 3 days passed, though it felt more like 3 years. Hospitals have a strange way of bending time. The lights never dim, the air never changes, and every second stretches into forever. I slept on the same chair beside her bed, my head against the cold metal rail. I didn't dream, I didn't even close my eyes for long. Every time I did, I heard the machines, the quiet hum of life being borrowed, sustained by wires and tubes. People came and went, nurses, doctors, strangers in scrubs who called me sir and smiled softly before disappearing down the hall. But he never came, not once. Every hour that passed without him made the truth sink deeper into my bones. He wasn't coming, not because he couldn't, but because he didn't care to. On the third day, she moved just a little, a twitch of her fingers. Her lips parted, dry and cracked, and for the first time since the surgery began, I heard her voice, fragile, barely a whisper. "Dad, is he here?" That question cut deeper than any knife could. I wanted to lie. God knows I wanted to. I wanted to tell her he was right outside, that he'd been there the whole time, pacing, praying, waiting for her, but I couldn't. She deserved truth, even if it hurt. So I said quietly, "No, sweetheart, not yet." She nodded weakly, turned her head, and a single tear slipped down her cheek. I wiped it away and said, "You rest now. Don't think about anything else. Just get better." She closed her eyes again, drifting back into sleep. And that's when something inside me changed. Up until that moment, I've been a father praying for a miracle. After that moment, I became something else, a man with a mission. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back to that video, the one from the yacht. It had been deleted. Of course it had. But I'd already saved it. Every frame, every laugh, every cruel, careless smile. I started digging deeper. Photos, posts, check-ins, tags. You'd be surprised how much of a man's soul he leaves behind on the internet. The more I found, the colder I felt. There were pictures from the week before, luxury dinners, hotel balconies, late night stories captioned with "living my best life." While my daughter was sick, he was out there pretending to be free, pretending she never existed. I remember sitting in that hard hospital chair, staring at the glow of my phone screen, and realizing something simple: he wasn't a husband. He was a parasite. So I began to plan, not out of rage, but out of duty, because fathers are built to protect, even when it hurts. I called an old friend, a lawyer I'd known for years, a man who owed me a favor. I told him everything. He didn't interrupt, didn't ask for proof, just said, "Send me what you have. I'll handle the rest." That night, while my daughter slept peacefully for the first time in days, I sat beside her and wrote a letter. Not to her husband, not to the world, but to myself. It began with one line: "A man's worth isn't measured by what he says when things are good, but by what he does when life falls apart." I folded it, placed it in my pocket, and looked at her. My little girl, the one who once held my finger with her tiny hand and thought I was the strongest man in the world. And for the first time in a long while, I decided to be that man again. The morning after I made that promise to myself, something in me felt different. It wasn't anger anymore, at least not the kind that burns. It was colder, sharper, the kind of anger that doesn't shout, doesn't break things, it plans. The hospital smelled the same, antiseptic and hopelessness. But I wasn't the same man sitting in that chair anymore. I'd spent 3 days waiting for a miracle. Now I was going to make one happen on my own terms. My daughter was stable, though still weak. The doctor said she'd recover slowly if nothing went wrong. I took that as permission to step away for a few hours and do what needed to be done. I drove home in silence, the kind of silence that presses against your ears, heavy enough to make you think the world has stopped breathing. Her husband's car wasn't in the driveway. It hadn't been for weeks. His clothes, his watch, even his toothbrush were gone. Like he'd already erased himself from this house, from her life, from everything. I went straight to my desk, pulled out a folder, opened my laptop, and began organizing everything I had. Screenshots, messages, photos, receipts. Every lie he'd told, every time-stamped proof of his betrayal. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing it for justice, for my daughter, who still believed love meant something. Around noon, my phone rang. It was Robert, my lawyer friend. He said, "I've looked through the files. You got enough to end him in court." I didn't reply right away. I just stared at the window, at the sunlight trying to force its way through the blinds, and said, "Good. Let's make sure he feels every ounce of what she felt." Robert was quiet for a moment, then said, "You sure you want to go through with this, John? Once we start, there's no turning back." I said, "I've been turning back my whole life. Not anymore." After the call, I sat there for a long time. Not because I doubted my choice, but because I realized how far I'd come from the man I used to be, the man who believed in forgiveness, in giving people a second chance. That man died the night I saw that video. Later that day, I went back to the hospital. My daughter was awake when I walked in. Her face was pale but calmer. She smiled when she saw me. "Dad," she whispered, "did he call?" I looked at her for a long time before answering. "No, sweetheart, not yet." She turned away, and for a moment I saw it. The pain she tried to hide, the kind of heartbreak that no medicine can heal. I wanted to tell her the truth, that he wasn't just gone.
He was celebrating her absence, but I couldn't, not yet. She needed strength to recover, not another wound to bleed from. So I told her a softer version of the truth. Focus on getting better.
Let the world outside wait. She nodded and closed her eyes again. That night, I stayed by her side. The rhythmic beeping of the machines had become a strange kind of comfort, proof that she was still here, still fighting. But even as I watched her sleep, my mind was already somewhere else. I started writing down names, lawyers, financial contacts, mutual friends, people who needed to know the truth about the man she married. I wasn't going to shout it from rooftops. No, I was going to dismantle him piece by piece until the world saw him for what he really was. By the time the sun rose, I had everything ready. The evidence, the statements, the timeline. I wasn't a father waiting anymore. I was a man preparing for war. Before I left the hospital that morning, I whispered one last thing to her. "You just rest, baby. I'll take care of the rest." And as I walked out, I didn't look back, because for the first time since that night, I finally knew what I had to do. The plan was simple. Expose him. Not with fists, not with shouting, but with truth. Cold, undeniable truth. By the time I arrived at his office, I already knew he'd be there. He was too arrogant to hide. That's what men like him do. They think silence protects them. They forget silence can also bury them. He didn't expect to see me. When I walked in, his face froze. That half second of panic before the mask returned. "John," he said, forcing a smile, "I was just about to call you." I didn't answer. I just placed a folder on his desk. Thick, heavy, full of the lies he thought would never surface. He looked down at it, then back up at me. "What's this?" "Proof," I said, "of everything." He tried to laugh it off. "Come on. You think this is—" "Don't," I interrupted. My voice was low, controlled. "Don't insult me again. You've done enough of that." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of the air conditioner was the only sound between us. Then he leaned back, smirked, and said, "You don't understand. She needed someone to be there for her. You weren't. That did it. Not the betrayal. Not the lies. It was that sentence. The way he tried to blame her pain on me." I took a step closer. "You know what she needed?" I said quietly. "Someone who wouldn't break her when she was already broken." He said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. I picked up the folder, opened it, and spread the photos across his desk. Messages, hotel receipts, timestamps. I watched his confidence dissolve, one piece at a time. "I'm not here to threaten you," I said. "I'm here to end this properly. Legally." His eyes flickered. "Legally?" "Yes, my lawyer's filing everything today. Divorce, civil claim, and a criminal report if needed. Every lie you told, every dollar you took, it's all in there." He swallowed hard, trying to find words. "You're ruining my life." I looked at him. Cold. "You did that yourself?" When I turned to leave, he grabbed my arm. "John, please. She doesn't have to know everything. Let me talk to her first." I stared at his hand gripping my sleeve. And for a second, just 1 second, I saw the same hand that once held my daughter's, promising to take care of her. Then I said, "You already had your chance to talk. Now it's my turn." I pulled away and walked out. Outside, the sky was gray, the kind of sky that feels like it's holding back tears. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel relieved, just empty. When you spend so long chasing justice, you forget what peace is supposed to feel like. That evening, I sat beside my daughter again. She looked stronger, even smiled a little. "Dad," she whispered, "did you see him?" I hesitated, then nodded. "What did he say?" "Nothing that matters anymore." She studied my face, maybe sensing more than I said. Then she reached for my hand and said softly, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I squeezed her hand back. "I never will," I said. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't over because the truth alone doesn't end pain. Sometimes it only exposes what's still left to burn. So I took a deep breath, put the phone away, and went back to her bedside. I pressed her hand again and whispered, "You're not alone, baby. You never will be." And as I sat there staring at her pale face under the harsh hospital light, I made myself a promise. I wouldn't let him get away with it. Not for what he did, not for what he failed to do. He was celebrating that night. But I swore to myself that would be the last time he ever smiled. When you tear the mask off a man like him, you don't just end a marriage, you start a storm. The morning after our confrontation, the first call came. A reporter, then another, then the hospital's PR office. He'd told his version first, Darshan, that I was harassing him, spreading lies. It didn't matter that I had proof. The world doesn't care about proof. It cares about noise, and he was louder. For a week straight, I barely slept. Every headline twisted the story: businessman targeted by angry father-in-law. Family drama turns bitter. I became a headline in a life I never wanted public. But while the world argued, my daughter was quietly getting stronger. She was walking again, slowly, carefully, with a nurse at her side. The machines that once hummed day and night were silent now. And for the first time in weeks, I heard her laugh. That laugh, it cut through the noise. It reminded me why I started all of this, but peace never lasts long when people like him are desperate. One evening, a car stopped outside our home. No lights, a engine running, then a knock at the door. A man handed me an envelope and left without a word. Inside, a letter from his attorney. Defamation. He was suing me. I sat at the table, reading every line. He wanted to turn this into a war of money, of power. But I didn't have his resources. All I had was truth, and truth doesn't pay for lawyers. That night, as the house went quiet, I sat in the dark, staring at the envelope. For the first time, I felt fear crawl up my spine. Not for myself, but for my daughter. She'd already suffered enough. Did I have the right to drag her through this again? I must have fallen asleep at the table because the next thing I remember was her voice. "Dad?" She stood there in her robe, pale but steady. Her eyes clear, focused. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "don't stop now. You've come this far." I wanted to tell her she didn't need to worry, that everything would be fine. But she saw the papers. She knew. When she went back to bed, I opened the drawer beside me and took out the flash drive. Every photo, every document, every message, everything I'd collected. I copied it all and sent it to my lawyer with one line. "If anything happens, release everything." For the first time, I realized I wasn't just fighting him anymore. I was fighting the system that allowed him to smile while others bled. Days turned into weeks. The lawsuit never came. Maybe he realized he'd lose. Maybe he just wanted to scare me. Either way, silence returned. But it wasn't peace. Silence, I learned, can mean two things: the calm before healing, or the calm before something worse. And deep down, I could feel it. The story wasn't done with us yet. It's strange
Just
how quiet life becomes after a storm. No reporters, no lawsuits, no calls, just silence. But silence, I've learned, can carry ghosts. 3 months had passed since that night in the hospital. My daughter was home now, walking slower than before, but alive. Every step she took was a reminder of how close I'd come to losing her. And every time she smiled, I saw pieces of her mother in her face, strength wrapped in gentleness. We didn't talk much about him. Not anymore. Some names don't deserve to be spoken aloud. But then one morning the news found us. A headline: his company under investigation. Fraud, embezzlement. The same arrogance that broke my daughter's heart had finally caught up to him. I didn't feel that joy, not even relief, just finality. It was over. And the police seized his assets. The lawyers called to confirm the divorce had gone through. My daughter's share protected, locked away, and he disappeared. Some say he left the country. Some say he didn't make it that far. I never asked. I didn't need to know because justice doesn't always come from the courts. Sometimes it comes from time, from the weight of guilt no man can carry forever. That night, my daughter and I sat on the porch. The sky was quiet, no sirens, no city noise, just the sound of her breathing, steady, alive. She turned to me and said, "Dad, are you finally going to rest?" I looked out at the stars. "I don't know," I said, "but maybe tonight I'll try." She smiled, tired but peaceful. For the first time, her eyes weren't haunted. As she went inside, I stayed a while longer. The wind was cold, soft against my face, and for the first time since that terrible night, I felt still. You spend your whole life protecting your child, but no one tells you the hardest part is letting go once they're safe again. I thought about everything we'd lost, everything we'd survived, and I realized something simple, something I should have known all along. Revenge fades, justice ends, but love is what stays. I closed my eyes and whispered to the night, maybe to her mother, maybe to whoever was listening. She's safe now, you can rest. And then, almost without meaning to, I smiled because I finally understood. He might have celebrated that night, but I made sure it was the last time he ever smiled.